I think Arteta is one of the worst things to happen to football in terms of every club now has to have a project. Well, what about the winning project that we had? That was okay. Project Win. Project, if you don't do a good job and you don't win, you're gone, and we'll get the next guy in and he'll win. And if he doesn't, he's gone. We'll get the next guy. That's mainly how football works.
Welcome back to Son of Chelsea. Daniel Charles here. Hope you're doing really well wherever you're watching or listening to this. Got a great guest and a great conversation about Chelsea today. Tobes is a Chelsea YouTuber, but has kind of broadened out to more football YouTube. I'm sure many of you, especially in this space, may know some of his work. Kind of the short documentaries, short looks and explorations into different types of football subjects, whether that be Matt Letizia, whether that be Thodgen, whether that be Chelsea discourse online. There's a lot to enjoy, and I wanted to have a conversation about that. So that's where we start the conversation, and then we broaden it out to Enzo Maresca, the hunt for Champions League football, and sort of fan expectation, and his player of the year. It was a great convo. Definitely go and support Toby's work. Link is in the description box below to all of that, whether that's TikTok, YouTube, all of that good stuff. And just a disclaimer as well on this intro, we recorded this conversation before the Legia Warsaw first leg, so we're not talking about the Ipswich game, but I do think a lot of what we discuss in this podcast is still pretty relevant. So I hope you enjoy. Please like, subscribe on YouTube, share the video around with friends. If you're listening to the podcast, really is appreciated if you enjoy listening to it, to give us a positive rating review to get it to more Chelsea fans' ears. But let's get to the conversation, and I do hope you enjoy. Okay, Tobes, thank you so much for joining me, mate. How are you doing?
Decent. I was just saying to you off camera, I would be better, but last night obviously Arsenal spanked Real Madrid, so I didn't enjoy that too much. But other than that, I'm all good. I'm all good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, there is a bit of fear creeping in that we may be soon watching the demise of Chelsea being the only club in London with a European Cup. But I guess we will always be the first to do it, and the first to do it twice. So that can never be taken away from us, can it? So.
No, exactly. That's what I'm telling myself at the moment. Even if they went and did it, it's like we have got two of them. You know, we have got two of them in the bank, but I don't want to see any. I don't want to see any English team do it. Really, at Villa, I'd be like, if Villa did it, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't care. Like that would be cool for them. But any of I didn't even like it when City did it, and I don't really care about City. But like that trophy's special. That should be guarded from anyone else in London doing it. Put it that way. And we're not the ones guarding it. That's what's more frustrating. We can't even do anything about it. We're just sat there playing Legia Warsaw, so we can't really do anything.
Yeah, we have to kind of. It's a weird situation where I'm hoping that like PSG are the ones who can save us from it. Like probably one of the last teams you trust at this stage of the Champions League. To kind of Real Madrid are that team. They're the inevitable defenders of the Champions League, and it's like, well, they've just been crushed. So, well, I mean, maybe something mad happens at the Bernabeu. We know that stuff like that can happen. But yeah, it will be interesting to see how it plays out. The first thing I wanted to sort of chat to you about is it's interesting watching your channel, and I know you have done Chelsea specific content, but especially more in recent months, you've sort of turned towards, whether you'd call them video essays, short docs, kind of videos really delving into one specific topic, whether it was about Chelsea discourse. That was, I think, the first video I saw of yours was about a certain individual in the Chelsea community that I thought was brilliant. And then, of course, you've done stuff about Thodgen, you've done stuff about Arsenal fans. What was it that kind of made you get into kind of that side of YouTube?
Well, basically, I've started on football TikTok TikTok during lockdown. I saw a couple of people doing it. I thought I can give this a crack. So I'd done that for a number of years to the point that, you know, I'd got a bit of money from that. I thought, okay, let's try YouTube now. Like, let's get a camera and like a nice setup and everything. Give that a proper go, because I want it to be high level. And I kind of started just continuing what I'd done on TikTok, where I like, okay, I'll do longer versions of reviews. But as that was going, the Rory one was off the cuff. The Rory one was more a case of, because every week it's a competition to an extent. Obviously, you want everyone to be up there, but Rory is the biggest face within Chelsea space. And every week I'm just seeing a disregard for things positive, focusing only on the negative. And I get that that's what sells. So that video was just, it was like, I could press buttons here and maybe get a response. And in that case, I get another video out of it. I'm going to grow out of it. he gets his name out there, which is ultimately his goal in terms of what he's doing anyway. I didn't think I said anything too bad. I just said things I thought. I didn't say anything I thought was disingenuous. I just sort of analysed what had been going on the last few months. I'd seen it and kind of thought, yeah, okay, I'm just going to speak my mind on it because I thought it was an interesting topic. I thought that it probably resonated with a lot of Chelsea fans in terms of how they felt represented, at least online, and they probably felt like, not this guy. So equally, I kind of spoke my mind on that. And as a result, because it did so well, there was kind of, I had an awareness that, the just reviewing Chelsea or whatever wasn't doing anywhere near as well in terms of views. So that is the game ultimately. It's as sad as it sounds, and that's why Rory's very successful. What he does, he's not going to make loads of positive videos because no one cares about them. He's going to watch the negative videos, so it's completely fair enough. And in that sense, I kind of took that video and thought, okay, well, if people want to eat burgers, give them more burgers. Don't give them carbonara another day if they don't want carbonara, quite clearly. So Thodgen, he looked like another burger. It just made sense to me in terms of as like a character online that people talk about. It made sense to, just have fun with it, basically. I don't want to swear or anything, but yeah, take the piss, basically, is what I kind of wanted to go down. Basically, I kind of wanted to do football internet melts. I mean, Joe Weller did that years ago, and that was incredibly successful. So if I could footballify that and take characters from that. So the Arsenal fans one was, okay, I'll take Lee Gunner and I'll take the other ultra positive side of the Arsenal fan base or whatever. I thought that'd be quite a fun way to go about it and like a unique lane within YouTube because it's just a different game, to be honest. I think that's what it is with YouTube at the moment. It's like I'm trying to find my feet in terms of thumbnails and how that gets in different people's suggestions and what kind of niche that fits into. But in doing so, that's kind of its own thing in a way where I kind of think I've taken a bit of a step back myself the last couple of months and actually I've basically been just solely doing TikTok and I'll come back to YouTube quite soon because I've got something I'm working on in the background that's more if anything just documentary Chelsea based because it's hard to ride that line of what do you want to do and what works. And what you want to do is ultimately talk about Chelsea as much as you possibly can. But equally, that, well, talking about Thodgen will do better. So talk about that. But I want to strike that balance of enjoyment in what I do and something that also works. So, yeah, I've kind of taken a step back in a way and maybe more go the more documentary approach. But I do have fun basically taking the piss out of stuff. So I wouldn't be against doing more of those kind of videos. It's just got to be the right kind of characters to pick up on and analyze, really.
Yeah, I mean, you have picked some of the, I guess, juiciest ones to kind of delve into, and I agree with you. It is at times it is a farcical space, the football online media space. I guess you call it fan media. I don't know what is the best way to describe it because it's so big now. Like especially the fan side. When I started, there was like 2 other Chelsea channels that I knew of, and nowadays it's just like endless, right? In terms of specific podcasts, YouTube, and I think pointing out the absurdity is important, and I agree with you that in terms of content and a creative side, you want to feel like fulfilled, right? You don't want to feel like this is becomes a job and it's beating you down, and that's an issue with football, right? Because it is a very reactive environment. It's not something where you, especially if you commit like myself and others to cover the club quite extensively, that it is very relentless, and even if the season ends, you got a Club World Cup to cover as well. So it is a bit mad, but I think that anyone who hasn't watched your videos, I mean, I have to say that the few times where I like literally am bursting out laughing out loud watching it.
Cheers.
Because as I said, there is a there is a baseline of kind of truth behind it and honesty of like there is a serious point, but I don't think you ever get it to a point where it's like so intellectual or so serious that people kind of tune out. No. It is. I think that's the genius of some of those short docs. To be honest, mate, is like I think that they balance those two things because you are at times hitting at the heart of stuff that I think resonates with people, but then doing it in a comedic way, which I think is not a simple thing to do. It really isn't, making people laugh like that. That is something that many people try and fail at. So in terms of the long term for the channel, is this the niche you're kind of now passionate about for the long term, or can you see yourself maybe going in another direction?
I can see myself going in another direction, to be fair. Like, I think it's because within football, it's somewhat limited in terms of those caricatures you can go for, and that was kind of the what I was looking at, where it was kind of looking at Letizia, and then the next one I had originally planned was kind of Joey Barton, looking at him, and then a lot of the kind of darker stuff came out about him, and you're thinking, do I really want to be delving down that rabbit hole so much? I think that's a bit more questionable. So like, there's a bit of hesitancy probably from me there, if I'm being honest, but equally, it's not something I wouldn't revisit. Like if Thodgen does some ridiculous stuff, rest assured I'll probably make a follow-up video. But like, it's got to be the right kind of characters, and also characters that understand what they're doing, because I think that's also the right chord we need to be striking with. These guys are aware. Well, I assume they're very aware that they are characters online, and they do portray a character to a degree. It is entertainment what we're doing, so that level of self-awareness, I think, gives me a bit of a guilt-free pass into being like, I can take the piss a bit because I know that they've played into it, and I know this is good for them anyway. So yeah, it's something that I'll definitely revisit, I'm sure. But equally, I want to do other stuff, and it's hard. You don't want to pigeonhole yourself too much. It sounds weird, even if it's doing well. You're kind of like, oh yeah, but I want to talk about wrestling as well. I don't want to just be football. Like it's hard to just um, not allow your own brand or you to become a certain thing you're only known for. So when you deliver something different, like I said, in terms of burgers and carbonara, like you want to kind of get an audience that has a bit of an expansive palette. I think that's what I kind of want to develop. So that's why I kind of taken a step back and thought, how am I going to do that so that will work basically, because it's tough. It's tough.
Is it also related to the fact that Chelsea, I guess, if you were to commit to covering Chelsea on a weekly basis, is not the most pleasurable? I can't believe that's not factored into your thinking somehow. And I'm not having a go. I've contemplated it many times in recent years, in terms of it just not being as enjoyable. So has that played into it?
Do you know what? It's not the as enjoyable part. I will always enjoy talking about Chelsea because if I talk about Chelsea, I talk about what I think about Chelsea. I'm not. It's not a game, and that's the issue with YouTube for me anyway. In terms of how I analysed it, it is a game to an extent. It is how do I get the best thumbnail? How do I get the best title? What makes an interesting video? Now, someone who I think within this space gets slagged off, and rightly so, definitely considered a video on him, Goldbridge. But I think Goldbridge is a genius. I think Goldbridge is the cream of the crop in terms of football fan media, like we were saying. And the other one was actually True Geordie before he. I mean, I don't know. That guy's talking about all sorts right now. But like when he was Newcastle football fan, he was angry Newcastle funny football fan. And Goldbridge has this character. Whether he's a Forest fan or not, I don't know. But it's a great character. It's undeniably he is funny. He farms clips for fun that work. I saw people pointing out like, oh, his streams are on a delay, so he knows when the goal is. It's like, yeah, because he knows how to react for the goal because it will be funny. He knows how to play that funny reaction or whatever. And I don't want to do that to Chelsea because Chelsea's too close to my heart, and I fully like respect creators that can do that. And almost in a way, I look at it, I think, God, it would have been genius to come on here as a United fan, as one of the biggest clubs in the world, and take that approach where you don't really care if you kind of, put your own club in the mud a bit because they're not so close to your heart. Now, like I said, I don't know. He might be a United. He probably is a United fan. But if I think of like a conscious business decision in terms of what you set up as a channel, that's a good way to go, right? Or be a Real Madrid fan that loses their head on camera. Like that would be more sensible. That's where there's more money in doing that. But when it comes to Chelsea, mate, it's more that recipe for success, or for those, I think that those guys are killing it in terms of what they're doing. I don't want to do it with that. I always want Chelsea to be what my actual real thoughts are. And like you said, and if you're not covering it like you boys do, a lot of those Matisse, Younes, all these boys, if you're not covering it meticulously every single day, getting every single bit of information out of it, you're not going to be able to succeed at it. And sometimes I think, it's like, if I had to speak about them every day, would I lose a bit of the joy for them? And that was what I was a bit worried about doing. On TikTok, it's a bit easier. I can chuck away some thoughts. I can talk about other football, but just honing in on Chelsea's niche, it's like, I don't know. I feel like I would have to maybe go more in a negative route when I don't want to do that to the club if I don't feel that. Like and that's partly what I spoke about in the Rory stuff. That's why I had a bit of a problem with it, because I'm like, this guy, man, we're winning 3-0. Like, come on, can we not enjoy this? But it is the game ultimately. It's a tough. like I said, it's tough to balance it all because you are still trying to maintain your interest and passion for what you generally are passionate about. And that's why everyone's fallen into this. Whatever anyone thinks, they're talking about football because they love football, or they're talking about Chelsea because they love Chelsea. And somewhere along the way, that could be lost if ultimately, like you said, it becomes a job. It becomes whatever. So it's just, I don't know. I think I'm just basically balancing act in my mind and not entirely sure, but it definitely factored into my thinking.
I feel like the difficulty is, especially if, like, I've been accused of being really negative and beating down the club and being negative for negative sake. And it's like, I know honestly what I feel about the club, and I know principled wise, like this season's a perfect example because I didn't feel that great during the summer, but then when things started to go well, my channel reflected that. And then as things started to downturn over the winter period, the channel reflects that as well. And I do kind of think the difficulty is, right, with this is that absolutely you're, in some ways, I think the outside, or kind of the big creators out there who gain a lot of success, I think the incentive models are there to kind of lead you down, very bluntly, a dishonest path. Either you're being told that for vibes wise, it's better for you to be overly positive because it will gain you credibility, or overly negative because it will also gain you, I don't know, engagement and reach. And I think that is a difficult balancing act. And I understand why maybe some people feel that being principled sometimes is maybe not always the shrewdest move, because from a engagement point of view, maybe you're not always going to get to where you want to be. But I mean, I think that personally, it's just, you've just got to be honest, right? You've got, I think for me, it's just being honest about the club. If I don't feel great about the club, I'm going to reflect that. I'm not going to lie to, because I think people have been watching and listening to my stuff for long enough now, the people who watch my stuff. And I think it's the same with your content, and it will be for many others, is like, you can't lie to people. Like, no one is that good an actor. Like, no one in fan media is an Oscar winning actor. You can tell when someone's BSing and kind of, trying to sell a lie. Like, it's not that hard to gauge, but it is a difficult balancing act. I wanted to ask you about, obviously, Chelsea specific stuff right now. And, obviously we started, the conversation briefly referencing, Arsenal and the Champions League. And it's interesting right now, we're recording this on the Wednesday before the Warsaw game. This will go out after the first leg of the Warsaw game. So I've got no idea how that's going to play out. But I do think a conversation that's rightly being had right now is Champions League the big thing? Is not getting it a disaster? And I think it very much plays into how you feel maybe about Enzo Maresca. I saw you quote tweeted and responded to a tweet that's gone quite far in Chelsea Twitter, or Chelsea X, whatever we call it now, about people's feelings. So just the first thing there, Champions League football, is that, for me, it's a defining line between success and failure this year. Is it similar for you?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more when I saw your tweet pop up, because I can't, when I'm seeing, it would be good for our squad to play Euro. Stop getting used to this. Everyone stop getting used to this. We're not getting used to this. And that's the problem that Arsenal had prior to what they've rebuilt. Is people getting used to, like, well, this squad's more. No, that squad needs to be in Champions League so they realise they don't want to play in any other competition. They need to know what it's like lining up with that music and having those massive nights, playing those massive teams, and think, I'm not going back to playing Olympia Ljubljana or whatever. Like, that cannot run. And the acceptance of that is mind-blowing to me, let alone the fact that with Enzo Maresca, like, there's been things I've liked about him, there's been things I haven't liked about him. I think even in terms of like recruitment, things above him are far more of a concern for me, maybe, than him individually. But equally, I didn't rate Poch, but the job of the next manager was to improve us, and by improve us, I would expect to go up one place, right? That would that not be improvement? And if we can't get top five in what, in my opinion, was been a very weak Premier League season, where we actually had a big head start because we started so well. So to regress as we have, and I know we've had some injuries, but every team has injuries, and throw a number of games to the point that we don't make it, that's not good enough for me, regardless of who was in charge or whatever, or what I thought of them. The goal this season, in my head, even when it was just 4 places, was we get Champions League because we're better than some of those teams, and we're playing in Conference League, and we have a big enough squad that you don't have to play the big players in that anyway. So to not get Champions League to me would be a disaster. It wouldn't be acceptable. And the idea that it's accepted as a fan base is what's mind-boggling to me, because I think the longer we go without, like, Roman didn't go more than one consecutive year. We've already achieved that with the current ownership 2 years out. If you make it 3 years, why wouldn't it be four? Why wouldn't it be five? Like, you can't get accustomed to that. Not even just the players, some of these young players. It's also to keep the likes of Palmer and Caicedo have not signed up to Chelsea Football Club wanting to play on Thursday nights. No Chelsea player has, but particularly those ones that you want to keep hold of for a long time, right? And the longer you go without, especially like this year, maybe next year they kind of go, all right, last crack, but they're not going to be there past that. Like last year for me, it would be the most you get out of those two before they go, I'm off. I'm off. Unless we get Champions League, I'm off. I'm gone. They did not sign up for that, and careers are finite. So, I completely understand that. By the way, that would be the right decision if you're removing your Chelsea bias from it. But like, those players need to experience Champions League. They need to know that you can compete on all fronts at Chelsea. You know, you can compete in the biggest competition, and the owners need to experience it as well. I know they had it the first year, and they kind of thought it was just a thing that you play every year. It's like, no, we would earn that every year. Then, yeah, they need to understand that's where we need to belong. So I can't understand any acceptance of anything below that.
I find I find it a bit puzzling because I was more favourable to Poch. I didn't think him leaving was a good thing, and I didn't think being replaced by Maresca was a good thing either. But it is, it's a phrase I've used a lot, or a word I've used a lot about kind of discourses. It does feel like gaslighting. Like, I've never asked this season for Chelsea to be title winners, for us to beat every big team, for us to be unequivocally the greatest team in the league. All I've asked for, I think my preseason prediction, and bear in mind this is before we started well, was fifth. One place higher than how we ended last year. And I don't really understand the mindset of we're basically wiping out what happened last year, and your mindset about this season is nothing happened before, and it's kind of being sixth and seventh it's effectively what we did last year. So now there's kind of no continuation, and I think it's insulting people's intelligence to try and act like last year didn't happen, we didn't finish sixth, and there wasn't a general feeling that, even by the club's own admission, and I think the final programme that people have picked up on, like literally the last programme of last season, was we want to get Champions League football. Now we're kind of moving those goalposts further, and I understand it internally for when Stanley and Stewart and Maresca. I understand them doing it to lessen their pressure. I don't understand fans actively going along with that kind of moving of goalposts. I can't wrap my head around it. Whatever your feelings, whether you agree or disagree with me on Maresca or whatever, I just don't get it. Logically, it makes no sense to me.
No, I agree. And I think it's because the ownership has become so divisive, this idea of like, it's going to work or it's not. And there's nothing wrong with just looking at it fairly and going, yeah, I like Jackson. I like Palmer. They paid a lot for Caicedo, but I really like him. But then also looking at the other issues and going, oh, you know what? We've also spent a lot on stuff that doesn't help us in the now. Like, it's not a simple black or white, everything's perfect, everything's bad approach. Like, there's no, I don't know, there's no actual real answer there. Like, there's a lot of issues. There's a lot of issues in terms of what they do recruitment wise. Even in January just gone, not bringing anyone in is one thing, but to weaken the squad when they just started to hit a bit of a dip after such a good start, it was like, why? What are we doing here? And even as I know people don't rate João Felix, and I completely get it. And I'm also on the fence. I don't know why he was signed exactly, but that's a better player than Christopher Nkunku. So why was that one? And that was apparent at the time anyway to me. A guy who's not trying, why would we keep him? Why would we line up the one that does try, but he does lose the ball and do silly flicks on the halfway line? But at least he could produce a moment or something. Not, he wouldn't have been the answer to our problems, but you get my point. Like, it's just some bizarre decision making that you see consistently. It does worry me. But yeah, in regards to, like you said, fans behaving like they're the board. I don't get the PR trained fans. Like, we are fans. You are allowed to say what you think or what you expect of Chelsea. And them, like you said, going into the season, I was somewhat positive because I liked what I saw from Jackson last season. I liked what I saw from Casado and Palmer, and equally, as much as I might have sat on a different side of the fence with you to Poch, I also saw, oh, those players should get even better. That team should get even better because they're spending more time together. They're going to develop chemistry on the pitch. So, like you said, to completely erase what you started to see budding in last season is also completely disingenuous. That's why I think I put us fourth. So, one place in it, either way, should get Champions League. So, sixth was not the expectation for anyone, whatever side of the coin you were on, really. So, and that wasn't, like you said, I didn't when we were trying to be framed that we were in a title race. At no point did I think we were in a title race. I said completely the opposite because I know what's in goal, and I also know that they're still quite a young squad, so it's not happening. But to then play down like, oh yeah, Champions League's not the bill. No, that's not what we. I still expect you to be better than Forest. I think that's a fair enough expectation. Fair play to Forest and everything, but the money we spent, the players that we have, yeah, I expected us to be ahead of Forest. I don't know exactly off the top of my head where Forest finished last season, but I think it was quite a bit below sixth. So I'd expect us to kick
Well,
on.
well, when we were at their ground, it was the penultimate game, wasn't it? It was one of the last games, and I think it was they had just secured safety when we kicked off, if I remember rightly. So relegation was still, it was like the first season. It wasn't as dramatic, I don't think, as the first season, but yeah, they were still affected. It was still a little bit dicey. Like they might have been dragged down.
Exactly, mate. So like to play down the idea, yeah, we don't need Champions League. You think they're doing it, and you don't want to expect that of us, of what we've been.
Yeah.
Like that's just crazy to me.
In terms of Enzo Maresca, I think I mean I've been quite down on him, and I am someone who literally from the moment he was appointed, I didn't really understand the appointment to begin with. But listen, we've already talked about, I think I'm fair. When the season started well, I literally titled a video, I think in September and October, like, he's proved me wrong, and he was proving me wrong, and the team was playing really well. But I think a lot of my fears from like June last year, I think have been proven right the longer the season has gone on. Now, that's not to say that from where we record right now, Maresca can't still achieve what we both agree is the objective. And I'm not someone who's going to sit here and if he gets fourth, still say he should be sacked, because I just think that's just ridiculous. Like, for whatever my dislike maybe of his style or kind of his demeanour in press conferences, he's got us Champions League football. He will stay another season. But in terms of the long term and how you think maybe he can improve as a coach, do you have faith that some do, that we just need to give this guy time, or do you think you've seen enough to kind of make more of a judgment?
It's hard, I think, as a Chelsea fan I think any Chelsea fan to go, we need to give this guy. We haven't seen that ever. Not, I think Ranieri had 4 years since like 2000, 2004. Other than that, like, you're looking back a long way before Chelsea gave anyone time, proper time. Mourinho for us was time, and that was 3 years. It's not a long time. But there are things I've liked about him. I've done the same as you. When the appointment got made, I thought, what are we doing here? And then as it progressed, and as I heard him speak, and then I even thought in terms of some of the players he let go, I kind of thought, all right, I'm okay with that. I think the Connor one was more of a board thing, but like getting rid of Sterling, whatever, I was okay with that. I was thinking, all right, okay, this guy's got his ideas, whatever. Let's see how it goes. And I think in terms of this season, I think we control games a bit better. I think sometimes that does come off really boring, and it definitely does. All the passing backwards, it does do my head in. But I do think in some ways you can see his coaching imparted on the team. So he has made an impact. And what I think what's frustrating with him is some of the negatives that I've seen were positives at the start, like that Bournemouth game when he subs on Sancho half time and Nkunku, whatever, changes the game, wins the game with those subs. There was Wolves, the 6-2, 2-2 at half time. We brought Neto on, or so, I can't remember, and we go on and smash them. The Spurs game, I think he brought Gusto on, and Gusto's had a real struggle of a season, despite what he looked like last season. But he brought Gusto on, and that kind of changed the game as well. We went and won that, and things that you saw about a guy that was bold in his decision making in doing that. I don't know where it went. In the second half of the season, it feels like it's gone almost back to Sarri taking Barkley on for Kovacic, where it's like, oh yeah, I'll just stick Nkunku on for Jackson there. And you think, why? Why are we doing this? Why are we playing him? weird rotations like Ipswich when okay, as you can tell, Nkunku does my head in, but Nkunku started and Disasi at right back, and things where you just think, why are you doing this? I even the weekend just gone, I think we threw that game. I know people say, oh, they're looking after Jackson Palmer. Palmer played like 90 minutes against Spurs, so I wouldn't say that's massively looking after someone's injury worries, if that's what your argument is. I think he said he wouldn't play Reece James at fullback because he's worried about his injuries. He played him at fullback. So I don't know, that kind of level of hypocrisy there, that's where I get a bit annoyed when fans are defending everything. And you think, we needed to win that game. It's a must win with the run in we've got. But all that said, I'm still a bit on the fence with him. His biggest problem, I think, for me was actually in the international break, hearing Tuchel speak again, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's my gaffer right there." Like okay, it sounds sad, but can you picture Enzo Maresca lifting the Premier League or Champions League with Chelsea?
No, but at the moment, no.
No, but not at the moment. No, as
It's
in, just forget that. I know it sounds stupid, but like,
no,
can you picture it?
I can't. Honestly, no, I can't because there's nothing. There's unless you are someone, unless we have unpicked an amazing coach, like once in a generation coach. Nothing in his CV preceding Chelsea indicates that. Look at what Jose Mourinho won before he arrived at Chelsea in 2004. Look at what Antonio Conte had done before he arrived. Look at what Thomas Tuchel had done. Thomas Tuchel's CV wasn't as impressive in terms of like he hadn't as won big titles as say in the same manner as say Jose and Conte, but you look at Tuchel, right? He led PSG to their first Champions League final. Obviously won titles in France, and had done quite a good job, obviously with Borussia Dortmund. Usually, the CV should kind of indicate something once you get to this stage. The unfortunate thing about Maresca is there's nothing there for me to look back on and go, and like, oh, in this situation he did this, in this specific environment he did this, he overcame this in a big way. I don't think Leicester is enough for me. Because of the financial advantage parachute payments give you in the Championship. That's just undeniable. So no, I unfortunately, maybe some people can. I'd like to drink what they're drinking, to be honest, and that's not me saying that Maresca's used. I can see him lifting the Conference League, and maybe that leads to something else in the future.
I want to add to that point. I don't want people completely thinking or getting my point misconstrued, because obviously his CV is very early. It's like saying, can you see Cesc with something? But I can, because I've seen him lift it as a player. The difference I'm more getting at with Maresca is more when he talks. And early doors, I quite liked the way he was or the way he'd address certain things. But all that playing down and then saying, oh, top fours and all that stuff, I thought, I've seen Tuchel walk in here with us ninth and say, we're here to win the Champions League. And I know that sounds so silly and so surface level for that to be enough to convince you. But yeah, it is that confidence or that kind of arrogance that these top managers do tend to exude. You get a feel for the Mourinho walking in the door. I know he had won Champions League, but you believed we were going to win the league that year, and we had not done it in 50 years. But you believed him. You've got, I don't know, there's just this sort of intangible sense of what a winner is. And I don't quite feel that with this guy. And that's what worries me long term. Do I think he's a bad coach? No. Is he flawed? Yeah. But has he got some positives? Yeah. So I'm sort of on the fence with him. But when I think of like a guy winning the things that Chelsea need to be winning and have won, I don't see that. I don't see that guy, and that's more what worries me long term. But I don't think. Basically, I think some sides that completely think he's awful and he's a horrific man. I don't think it's there, and equally the ones that say how amazing, how improved everything's been, I don't think it's there either. It's somewhere in the middle with him, and it will be determined in this stretch because this fixture run's really tough. So if they get Champions League, he's done a good job there in this gap of the remaining games of the season. He would have done really well if we get Champions League, because I don't think we will with the fixtures we've got and the way we're playing. But I'm not going to ignore the last 2 months. I'm not going to ignore the first 3 months. And ultimately, you've got to be closer to the first 3 months if we want to get Champions League. And if he can deliver that, then he has done his job for now. But yeah, I'm not so sold long term.
No, I think that is a fair assessment. I think that one of my frustrations with the uber positive people, a lot of it is to do with theory and what could be. And I think the frustration for me and others during this ownership is what's actually here and now, and what is tangible proof of progress is like that should matter. It shouldn't just be, well, theoretically in 5 years we'll be here. It's like, well, there's nothing right now that is telling me that that's what's going to happen. So I can't just shut my brain off for 5 years and then I'll come back. I'll jump in my TARDIS and I'll wait 5 years and I'll come back and then I'll see what Chelsea have become. That's not how football works. Like there's, and Maresca's a part of that. Like I was having a conversation with someone last night that Maresca has to. I think everyone brings up Arteta, they bring up Klopp, they bring up Guardiola, and I could go off into a tangent on why, especially Guardiola and Klopp, are very different, and why they probably quite rightly gained a lot of credit in the bank even before they started that job for obvious reasons. But in the case of like Klopp, I've spoken to Liverpool fans before, and they've said, he earned that time. Time wasn't just automatically given to him. He did things early on and in his reign that made people believe they were going in a direction. And my point back is like, I don't listen. Getting Champions League football is important, but I also think there are intangible things that we as fans know that if he beats Liverpool at home, that will be seen as a massive memory for people. Like, especially given we haven't beat any of the elite sides for years now. If we go up to St James's Park and beat Newcastle, in the context of this season, that would be seen as a massive moment. People, it's also, as good as those moments are, people remember the bad away days at big grounds because those big games hold significance. So when you go to Arsenal and offer absolutely nothing, that's what that sticks in people's head because it should be a big game. So do you think that for some of those people who may be right as we speak right now are pretty adamant that they're against Maresca, do you think that a really good performance against Liverpool, let's say we beat Liverpool, right, and we either draw or have a really good performance at St James's Park, and then we get Champions League, we win the Conference League, do you think people's minds will turn back round a little bit on Maresca?
Yeah, but with hesitancy. I think that's how anyone should be. On the other side of the coin as well, I don't think anyone should be, like you said, it's earned. You have to earn those things. And in beating a Liverpool, in going away to St James's Park, especially if they have to win there, while you're wrapping up Conference League as well, undeniably, that would be a nice end to the season that we'd all enjoy. And it would also be a tough thing to do. Going to St James's Park when they're playing for Champions League and we're playing for Champions League, and you go and get a result, that's a tough thing to do. So I think anyone would give credit there, whatever side of the coin they're on anyway. But I like to think even the ultra positive ones in the last couple, they can't be enjoying this. It's been awful. But ultimately, everyone has the same goal. I'd imagine. I'd like to think. It doesn't always feel like that, but they want Chelsea to be doing well. We all want Chelsea to be doing well, whether you're right or wrong. In an ideal world, we all get proven wrong about everything negative we say regarding our own club. There's not one Chelsea fan out there that sat there going, I told you so, and I'm more happy that I told you so than be proven wrong. It's not the case. So I think people would warm more to him naturally if we did end the season really well, got Champions League, had big results, big moments, like you said, memorable things that would happen. So I hope that happens. I'm not so sure. I'm not sold at all, but I really do hope that is the case because I want Chelsea playing Champions League. I want those players playing Champions League. And like you touched on, some of the idea of in 5 years, it's doing my head in. We've signed Kenda. He might be really talented. He's not even here for another year. And I've seen the whole social media timeline anyway lose their minds. And you just think, okay, Esteval was cool. That's nice having like one of these players, but can we have some players for now? We need to be good really now because Kenda and all these other guys, they ain't playing with Caicedo and Palmer because those guys will be gone. You're not going to, like you said, it's just theory. It's the practice is what we're seeing on the pitch. And I'm not going to see those guys for 2 or 3 years anyway. And by then, some of the good players people like here now, they won't be here. We need to be good in the now. Like, I don't know. That stuff does my head in. All the buzzwords, and that's just a football thing. That's not even just Chelsea project. And I think Arteta is one of the worst things to happen to football in terms of every club now has to have a project. Well, what about the winning project that we had? That was okay. Project Win. project, if you don't do a good job and you don't win, you're gone, and we'll get the next guy in, and he'll win. And if he doesn't, he's gone. We'll get the next guy. That's mainly how football works. Some people are lucky enough to have a manager for X, Y, and Z years or whatever. We had Mourinho twice, and we got three leagues in 5 years from it. Like you don't have to have some massive project thing. If you have the right players and you're getting the right manager for their current period or who's going to get the best out of them, that's basically what works. But yeah, it's this obsessive nature of projects and buzzwords like that does do my head in, I have to say.
I think it does for many people, to be honest. Before we wrap up, recently they've released the club has released the voting now for Player of the Year. So I know there are some people discussing who should be Player of the Year, and I mean, to me, I think it's pretty obvious, or at least there is a second choice. I think that is quite obvious, or at least deserves respect for his performances this year. I think Palmer has to do something mad between now and the end of the season to change my view, like truly mad. Like he has to go on, like he's scoring every game, he's winning us all the points. But to me, I mean, my assessment for Player of the Season is I think Moises Caicedo is my Player of the Year. The other alternative I was referencing is Motka Correa. Is Caicedo your Player of the Year, or is there someone else out there that you think maybe deserves a bit more credit?
Easy, Caicedo. Easy. Like, just in terms of the consistency at what that guy's performed, that not even just this year, the second half of last year to now, that he's phenomenal. He's a top footballer. And where Palmer, maybe in December, if you'd ask people, it would be quite 50-50 between the two, even though I think most people would agree that Caicedo consistently week in, week out was the highest performer, but Palmer probably had the highest ceiling of a performance or whatever against Brighton or Newcastle. But the last 2 months have meant that Caicedo's walked away with that, because even as dross as some of it's been, he's still been there and still been having good games. I don't really know how. Like, it does feel quite infectious among a lot of them. But yeah, I think Cucurella's been really good. I thought he improved a lot last season, which was to my surprise, because that first year at Chelsea, I think most people wrote him off and were happy to see the back of him. And he has just gone on to maybe eat my words in regards to him. I think he's been not just brilliant this season, but I thought he was really good last season in the Euros. He's phenomenal. He's a wicked player, and he's hard work. And these players are hard working players as well. Like they're the things that are still giving me hope regarding this project and everything. You know, there are still players there where I do like them, and I do think they walk into a lot of top sides, or the majority of top sides anyway. So it would be those two just on consistency of top performances alone. But yeah, like you said, if Palmer wants to start whacking in free kicks and doing all sorts for the rest of the season, he might end up scraping his way back in. No, prove me wrong, Cole. Go on. Get back to that Brighton first half. Do that every game, and we're flying.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I just think Caicedo. Yeah, I agree with you that even in that first period of the season, I just, I'm a big believer. I know it sounds very obvious, but it sometimes feels like social media kind of warps this. That for me to be Player of the Season, it's your performances from August to May. It's not from like November, December to April. It's not a few good weeks that are really stand out. Like someone like Enzo Fernandez, I think has been. If we did like a separate category of like maybe most improved, he would maybe be up there.
Jackson and Enzo both had periods, yeah, exactly. Like there's been players who have had nice patches, but it's those boys have been super consistent, like you said, August to May.
No, 100%, and hopefully those will. I think Cucurella and Caicedo, especially. I think if we get Champions League football, I think most people will look at their performances as kind of like the backbone of this team. Because I think their performances in some games have done, especially Cucurella, I think does a lot of small things that add up to big results for Chelsea when we have had them. So yeah, he deserves to be up there. But thank you so much, mate, for joining me today. As I do with all my guests, just a chance for you to shout out where people can find your work online, and also maybe further tease that upcoming Chelsea documentary you mentioned earlier.
Okay, I think on YouTube it's Tobes. I think off the top of my head it's Tobes. And if you type that on TikTok, you'll get either. So Tiki Taka Mate is my football one, and I'm trying to hit 100k on there. I'm not too far off, so if you can follow that, that'd be great. And then Toby Evenden, which is my name on TikTok, is my wrestling one, which I've started growing. So that's great if you like wrestling, and I Dan loves wrestling as well. So yeah, trying to grow that one as well.
No, I have to say, seeing the Batista clip from the O2, I mean that the Batista song is like it is one of the. I always forget about how great it is and then I hear it, and then I have to listen to it a few times. So it's been on like my workout playlist and stuff, and I've been doing running recently, and it's on there as well. And it is one of those that I think has to be like top 10 for me, even though I don't always think of it like that.
I find it so hard because I was discussing that with mates the other day. Like, if you went top 5 for wrestling themes, Batista's in there, but then then I'm like, okay, well, but Edge's theme is up there with any.
Yeah.
Triple H's theme's up there with any. But Mark Henry's theme is up there with any.
Oh yeah, there are some. I love that they're doing those events now, aren't they? They're starting to do those like live events, and I was like, I need to get one. I need to get to one of those nightclubs like where they're doing that, where they're just putting out banger after banger.
That'd be so much better than Mr. Brightside. Like, what are we doing? Get somebody's going to get their ass kicked.
If you're going to get a DJ for Stamford Bridge, just play. The only thing I'll credit Arsenal for was when they started playing randomly during COVID. They started playing wrestling themes at half time. So I'd like to see that Stamford Bridge. We can hopefully start a movement and get it as the soundtrack for Chelsea, because I think it would go down much better than whatever crap they've been serving up with the DJ so far.
Mate, when I see those clips of the DJ, those have to be plants, right? The people in the background. I was like, there's no fans, no one's doing that.
Yeah, I can't believe. I mean, I'm sorry if any of those people, if those people are legit, I'm sorry, but yeah, I have to say, they do look a little bit like they're either glitching or they've been planted there, because no one else. The worst thing is they don't have the frame of it on the screen that good, so you can see past those people, and everyone else around them is just sat still looking a little bit awkward. So it's like, why aren't those people dancing and those kind of two people at the front the ones that you're focusing on dancing?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that DJ. Although what I did like before the Spurs game, I don't know if anyone noticed, they played blue as the colour before the game, and I was like, ooh, I like that, because that's usually that's an after the game and it's just liquidated before, but freshen it up, stuff like that. All for it, but a DJ playing David Guetta at halftime, no thanks.
More Mark Henry, less Guetta. That's the campaign we're going to start for next season. But thank you so much, mate. And as I say, if you have been listening, please do give us a positive rating review. If you're watching on YouTube, please also let us know your thoughts down in the comments, like, share, all of that good stuff, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.